What's up guys, Cloudie here, checking in from the America server, and in this video we're gonna be looking at the third hero who had his adjustments in the February balance patch, and this is gonna be Roy. As a word of warning, Roy has always been kind of the character that I draw very first from my roster, even on my original main account, which you can see now, and also like on my alt. So I never really considered myself a Roy player, and I don't really know anyone or can't recall anyone who is a Roy player, to the point that I couldn't find anyone that I could ask questions about how exactly he works. I remember that he used to be all about spamming Blade Claw, his third skill, and Vespa seems to have changed this with the current patch. But yeah, take the things I say now with like a grain of salt. If you are a Roy player yourself, then feel free to correct me if I got anything wrong. I tried to make sense of his new skills and abilities and how he will actually play out, but I may very well be wrong because my testing here was a little bit limited. So just wanted to be completely honest about that with you guys. But let's see how this actually works out. Let's see what Mr. Roy can do. So let's go to his skills, if I can even find him in my roster, because yeah, he is not one of the favorite heroes. There he goes. And in complete your rainbow fashion, I have rainbow gears on him. But let's see his skills. So the first skill that got changed is Merciless, his S1. So this used to say that it attacks a random enemy 3 times, and now it says it attacks an enemy 3 times. So I did some testing, and this seems to be like going in a sort of forward motion and attacking 3 enemies, so not just one enemy 3 times, but different enemies, because I was able to do his blood stacking, mortal wound stacking on various enemies using this skill. So that's kind of interesting. Maybe this is more of his AoE skill if you need to stack mortal wound on more than one target. And also it has now this 25% P damage increase baked into the skill. This used to be like a perk for him. Also they changed from the skill book 4. This used to be like increased crit damage, and now just increased damage. So overall this will do more damage now. I'm not quite sure how much this is a part of his normal rotation. The uptime of this is pretty good, like 10 seconds, then 8-second cooldown, so you might just fire it off for that amp. But I'm not sure if it's really worth, because his other skills are quite a bit more spammy, or his Blade Claw is anyway. You might prepare for like a burn phase with this one. But let's move on. Curtain of Darkness, his skill 2. Now this has gotten some nice buffs. So instead of being just his own buff, now this is increasing all allies attack by a flat 80k, which is not too bad. 80k is quite a nice number, and also gives some P dodge, so that can be useful for some physical content. After this, Roy gains Spectre Breath for 10 seconds, so like well, it's not a full uptime because 15-second cooldown. For the duration of Spectre's Breath, increases own attack speed by 250 and damage dealt to enemies by 20%, and evades all P damage attacks. Now the 20% damage dealt to enemies is quite a nice buff. This wasn't there before. It was actually deals a 10% increased damage to the enemy. So this is a buff definitely, and he is now less of a selfish assassin, which is quite nice. It might even mean that in some contents you can take Roy as a support role, which is interesting. Quite nice to have. And his S2 has become quite a bit more useful. Now let's see. Of course, his signature skill was his Blade Claw. He was all about spamming. I said spamming again, Jesus. So I said spamming Blade Claw, his S3, which would be then consuming the stacks of mortal wound from the target and adding higher damage for each stack. Now this has changed. This is no longer spammable the way it used to be. It has a 3-second cooldown, and now you get 2 mana for each time crit when it crits. And this says the cooldown of his hack skill, which is his S4, which is quite interesting. So his S3 resets his S4, which is a passive skill with a cooldown. That's yeah, that's also quite rare, I think. And also here they changed the increases crit damage part to increases damage, so this will do more damage, I believe. but it's not as spammy anymore, except it is, but you need to invest more into ROI for that. But let's get back to that later. Now let's see Hack, which was also quite a bit changed. He gains a flat 300 crit chance boost, which is quite nice. In the TM era, an extra 300 crit chance is quite nice. It means that you have more lines that you can just push into attack and penetration, which are your main DPS stats nowadays. If a normal attack is landed as a crit, so normal hits, then that he will attack the target 6 times, dealing additional P damage and inflicting a stack of mortal wound with a 50% chance. So this is quite nice, because for a 50% chance he actually needs a 5-star unique weapon. So this helps him stack up his mortal wounds faster, which in turn lets him spam or do more damage with his S3. So that's quite nice, I think. One thing to note, it has a 10-second cooldown, but with Blade Claw you can keep resetting this. So as long as you are critting with Blade Claw, this will be pretty much always up. So that's quite nice. Technically you would be like Blade Claw S4, Blade Claw S4, and yeah, I think that's quite nice. This seems like the new way to go with ROI, and there you can see the video will be having a maintenance soon. Maybe you get to watch this video during that. Okay, so, and also the damage of this was increased by 25%. Now one thing I kind of want to know, but I couldn't really figure right now, is that if this is considered a skill attack or a normal hit attack, so like auto attack damage, because for some TM lines and perks that actually matters, and we will get to that in a moment when we look at his perks and unique treasures. So let's just get to that. So Transcendence perks. Of course you would always pick the normal PvE ones when you're running PvE, and let's see what they changed about the S1 perks, Merciless. So they changed the Dark perk. This used to be the increased 25% damage, but now this changes the number of hits to 5 times. So technically a single skill of this would stack mortal wound to the maximum, but this is also, I think this might be better if you are using it in an AoE situation. It seemed to me that even with my very low unique weapon he had no trouble keeping up his mortal wound stacks at the max. They would stack to 5 faster than I could spam S3. So I think you will not really be using S1 during burst phases when he's doing his damage, and other than that it doesn't really matter. So maybe this is good for AoE, but I'm not quite sure if it's needed at all. Let's see, Curtain of Darkness, Light was changed, the attack boost is increased by 40%, so this one, now this is a Dispel upon himself, so a Cleanse, maybe a PvP perk, I'm not quite sure, but yeah. I guess if you wanted to PvP with ROI, then you would be running this, because self-cleanse is also nice. And there is an interesting perk here. Auto attack damage is boosted by 100% for the duration. So if his hack damage is considered an auto attack, then this could be quite nice indeed. And ROI has pretty fast auto attacks as far as I could see anyway. If you are spamming, Jesus, I can't say that word today, it's almost like mechanic, guys. So if you are spamming S3, then maybe you won't be getting that many autos off, so the value of this is a bit questionable to me. Maybe some of you who use ROI can enlighten me about this. If this is indeed working together with hack, then maybe the auto attack lines are actually good for him. I'm kind of doubtful, but this is something that will need to be tested by someone who actually plays ROI actively and has a built one. But okay, let's move on to Blade Claw now. Of course, the biggest change here is the Blade Claw S3 Dark, which used to be the cooldown is removed. So instead, now we have a 3-second cooldown. And this is changed now to the targets the enemy with the lowest HP. Yeah, so this would be again a PvP perk, I guess, because before that now it's targeting an enemy. It seems to be like moving to the furthest enemy, really. From my testing, it seemed to be doing that, so it's not random. He just moves forward to be behind the enemy that's the furthest from him, but not quite sure. This is what I could see from my testing. So yeah, so you no longer get the reset cooldown perk. you will get it with the soul weapon. But instead you can take this one, which is in exchange for what an additional mana cost, damage dealt is increased by 100%. Now again, my gut pick would be this one because it increases the damage, but the question is whether it increases all the part of the skill, like including the one from mortal wound, or just like the main part, because the Vespa isn't always quite consistent with that. If it increases both parts, then this would definitely be a very good skill to have. Moving on, his S4 Hack Light, each hit recovers 300 mana, and it's like 6 hits, right? Yeah, it's 6 times, so this would be like almost 2 complete mana bars, which could be quite nice, especially if you are spamming away with S3 then, and weaving in that hack in between, then that could be like a really good source of mana. Remember, he also gains mana with Blade Claw when he crits, so that would be a lot of mana in between those. It might be overkill, he may not need that much mana at all. Remember that Blade Claw is actually 3 mana and 4 if you take that perk, but maybe if this triggers between your casts, then you can actually just simply spam away. So this might be actually something really nice to have for him. And moving on, his tier 5 Dark, upon a critical hit increases attack speed by 300 and crit damage by 60% for 5 seconds. Does not activate again during activation. So I guess during that 5 seconds while it's active you cannot refresh it, but the next crit hit you do will apply the buff again. So this seems to be quite nice as well. From that point on, I guess you would pick, if you need the mana, then you would probably pick this one. Otherwise, attack and penetration is always good, especially for someone who does not have ignore defense, and Roy does not have any. So for him, definitely this perk will be good. So it kind of comes down to whether you want to pick this one or his light perk, or if you have extra TP on him, then maybe you can take both. And perhaps the auto attack damage. I'm still on the fence about this one because I'm not quite sure how hack is counted. If hack counts as an auto, then maybe yes. But okay, let's see his unique gears and how they got changed. So his unique weapon was changed that actually the percentage of normal attacks is lower, but hack also does now inflict a bleed stack or mortal wound stack. So on a base unique weapon, this is 20%. And it goes up all the way to 50, and each stack of mortal wound also does additional damage. This is also part of the original one. Originally this was like extra damage, but this is now and 50% of it, but now it is based on the mortal wound stacks, and it actually goes higher than it was before. So from 50% with a 5 stack mortal wound, we are going for 150% attack as damage, so that's quite nice. I think that will up his damage even more, but this is only normal attacks and hack, so but then again, even before it was just normal attacks, so that's quite interesting. Now it seems that Vespa also wanted Roy users, this seems to be the thing, to change their unique treasure, because it's funny, I only have this one for him. So they added to this that for the duration of the skill recovers own mana by 150 every second and increases own damage dealt against bosses by 10%. So S2 already gives him like a flat damage bonus to all skills, and then he gets some extra boss damage, and at 5-star this goes up to 25%, which is not a bad number at all. The mana gain is kind of a bonus, but he also gets 25% boss damage, and that's very, very hard to beat. I think none of his other unique treasures will actually compete with this one, but we can look at the other ones, which is the Craig Mask, his UT3. So this now reduces the cooldown of his Blade Claw by 1 second, so it makes it 2 seconds instead of 3, and increases damage. Well, if you do not have his soul weapon and just want to spam Blade Claw, maybe it's good. But I think the boss damage in general will be more useful, unless you are thinking PvP. In that case, something else might be better. Maybe the UT3. I'm not quite sure about that one. Now his soul weapon is changed, and that's a bit interesting. So they changed the activation requirement to be using a skill 6 times. the skill info is changed that each time Roy casts Blade Claw deals additional damage to the target and inflicts 1 stack of mortal wound. So yeah, this is tied into Blade Claw. The cooldown is reduced to 18 seconds, which is quite low. Advancement 1 will reduce the cooldown by another 7 seconds, so that's like 11 seconds cooldown. That's alright, okay, that's quite nice. For the duration of the skill, Blade Claw does not remove mortal wound stacks. That's... oh sorry, the before version was the cooldown by 7 seconds, but they baked that into the base one. And the new version of Advancement 1 is that for the duration of the skill, Blade Claw does not remove mortal wound stacks. So that's quite nice. That means that you do not even need to bother with restacking. You can just spam away S3, especially when you hit Advancement Phase 2, because for the duration of the skill, fixes cooldown of Blade Claw to 0 seconds, and then additionally recovers 1 orb of mana upon use. So technically, in a burst situation, you would just be spamming S3 without any limitation, and that's why the Craig Mask unique treasure doesn't really make sense anymore once you have an A2 Roy, because in those... how long does this last? Actually, they don't quite write it here. I assume it's like 10 seconds or so, in which case it means that during those usual burst phases, Roy can just keep spamming away his S3, dealing constant damage with his S3 and also not removing his mortal wound stack, so he would be in full burst mode. And of course you can apply your S2 before that and even buff with S1 if you wanted to do that. So yeah, this seems to be the new Roy. So still spammy, just not as spammy, and you only really do it during boss phases or like burst phases on bosses. Comes with a new unique treasure with extra boss damage. Extra boss damage is always nice to have. Yeah, so all in all, I believe his damage was buffed. I can't quite tell at the moment if he's more competitive with like Cecilia and Mitra on single target physical damage. But definitely it seems like a nice buff for him, especially if you have him at A2. So yeah, and he also receives some PvP buffs, which can be quite nice to have. So all in all, Roy got a decent buff, I believe. But at this point, I would really need someone who plays Roy to tell whether he is competitive now with others or not. So if you are one of those people, please let me know in the comments. I would really like to know what you think of Roy now. Sadly, my experience with him is somewhat limited. But yeah, this was my take on him. So this has been Cloudie for now, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, bye bye.